What up, everybody? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Traeger Grills. Traeger Grills, look, it's the number one grill you can buy, especially if you are even from pro to newbie. Traeger Grill is one of the best grills. They have great products, super easy to use. I really like a lot of their rubs as well. So TraegerGrills.com and go get you a Traeger Grill. Head over to the website, elliottmarshall.com, and you can register and get set up to come to Maui with me and my crew, December 18th through the 22nd. An amazing time. Mindfulness, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, aloha culture, and really just some great camaraderie with other like-minded men. So head over to the website, elliottmarshall.com, up in the header, Maui Mastermind. Let's go. What's up, my ninjas? This is former UFC fighter Elliot Marshall, and this is the Gospel of Fire, where we are going to learn how to go into the fire so that we can find our power and live the best life possible. This episode of the podcast is with Athena Laz. Athena Laz is a dream expert. I got to ask a lot of really interesting questions about dreams to learn the difference between lucid dreaming and vivid dreaming, which I found very interesting. Her take on spirituality and connecting the two. So if you like this episode, please give a share, give her a review. That would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, here we go. Athena Laz. What's up, Athena? How are you?
I'm good, Elliot. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and I noticed your accent right away. So I was like, where are you located? You're in Florida, but you're originally from South Africa.
That's right. I'm from South Africa, very new to the States, love both places. People here tend to love my accent, which I'm really appreciating, especially after recording an audiobook.
Nice.
Yeah, I was worried that maybe it would be a bit off-putting, but it wasn't. So
tell me about your book.
So my book's called The Alchemy of Your Dreams, and it is a modern guide to the ancient art of lucid dreaming and dream interpretation. And then I also have a dream journal, which I created as like a accompanying journal for people who really want to get into their dreams, because it's helpful to write them out in the morning.
The dreams are so interesting to me, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I don't always lucid dream. Do you lucid dream often? Like, do you make it happen?
Yes, I can make it happen. But even though this is something that I teach, there's no guarantee that if you go in with the intention to lucid dream, that you're guaranteed to lucid dream, right? So I think any lucid dream teacher worth their salt will say that, but I think the more you practice and the more disciplined you are in your mindfulness practice in waking life, that spills over into sleep and kind of really benefits lucid dreaming.
That's very interesting, because the more I've practiced mindfulness and being, as self-aware as, I don't ever like to say I'm self-aware, because I think that sounds so arrogant, because you just might not be, so, have I told you how good looking I am? Things like that, right? Like,
right.
So I try to be self-aware. Let's say I notice that I do have more lucid dreams. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But just for our audience that might not know, explain lucid dreaming.
Sure. So lucid dream is when your body is sound asleep, you're fast asleep, but something in a dream alerts you to the fact that you're dreaming. So we could say that your consciousness or your awareness, or for some people, the mind, but I don't really like the word the mind, kind of wakes up and you go, oh, wait, I'm in a dream. I'm dreaming right now. And in the States, we particularly think of lucid dreaming as a practice that's it. Okay, I've recognized that I'm dreaming. I'm in a dream. And that's lucid dreaming. That's not really the lucid dreaming that I teach about. That's like the starting point of lucid dreaming, just recognizing like, okay, this is the dream. And then there's so many applications for what you can do in that space. But just from a fundamental level, a lucid dream is when you're fast asleep, but your mind or your awareness wakes up to the fact that you're dreaming.
Okay. So you said that's not the lucid dreaming that you teach. What is the lucid dreaming that you teach?
So, I mean, I start off there because I think that's the most helpful place to start off with. But really, my work is orientated around what we can do in a lucid dream that isn't necessarily ego-driven, right? So there's a lot of narrative around this practice where you can do really epic things, like you can fly, you can go to places, you can do really, if you can think of it in a dream, you can do it in a lucid dream, right? And so the applications for it are profound in that way. And to start off with, like I've done that in lots of lucid dreams. Like I've flown, I've made myself really big, really small. I've gone underwater without needing to breathe, and it feels incredibly real. So they are epic experiences to have, right? But the more you sort of enter into this world of self-development through dreaming, it becomes really apparent that you can use the dreamscape to do things like become really proficient in a skill. So like there's studies with people who are athletes that they can, if they learn how to lucid dream, it can really increase performance in waking life. And then they're also hugely beneficial spiritual, what I believe are spiritual and psychological benefits, like being able to resolve issues that you can't resolve in waking life in your dreamscape, right? But you need to be able to lucid dream in order to use that time in a way that's helpful, right? But that's my work. That's how I view it. I'm not saying that everyone should view lucid dreaming in this way. Just that's kind of the people who come to me are interested in that.
Let me ask a question. Sure. So when, like, if you're doing work during the dreaming, let's say, I mean, is this when you're sleeping at night?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
what about rest? Like, are you rest? Like, does the body get actual rest when you are doing this intentional work, let's say?
So it's a huge concern for people, right? Because we're so sleep deprived as a culture anyway. Imagine now like you practicing lucid dreaming and you feel exhausted. For most people, and there's studies that back this, most people wake up actually feeling more replenished and refreshed because the body is still doing what it needs to do. It's just that your awareness is awake. Also, the idea of being lucid for the entire night, I mean, that would be so amazing, but that is a type of level of mastery that I think most people will just never attain, So I think that you might have one lucid dream in a night, probably most people have them just before they wake up in the morning, or they're the ones that they tend to remember, right? So these experiences don't really take from your sleep life that much. There are some people, they're probably, in that study that I was saying, there were about 90% of people said that they literally woke up feeling really replenished, just as if they had gone to sleep without recognizing that they were lucid. And about, 10% said that it kind of affected them because they wanted to wake up to remember the experience.
How long does that lucid dream last?
So, I mean, it can feel really, it can feel really long when you're in the lucid dream, but then in actuality, it can be minutes. Part of your REM cycle. So it really isn't a long period of time that you are well, you're not even sacrificing. I don't believe it's a sacrifice, but so there's, I can't tell you the exact amount of time. I think that's a bit out of my kind of field of what I know.
But it's not hours. It's not.
No, it's not hours at all. Yeah.
So we've all had those dreams. I mean, I think we've all had those dreams where you're mad at your spouse when you wake up. Right? That's a form of lucid dreaming.
So can you give me like a broader example by what you mean?
I had one the other night. My wife just picked up and left us. Like she literally just picked up and left me and the kids, and when I wake up, I'm like, man, fuck you. Right. Like I'm still a little mad because I was mad at her in the dream. Like how the hell could you do this?
Right.
like, forget about me. Like, you bounced on the kids. Like, how could you do that to them?
Yeah.
So,
like, how can you be such a bad person right now?
Right.
So a dream like that, right? Even though it's vivid, I wouldn't say it's lucid. It's a vivid dream.
Tell me the difference.
Because the difference is this, that like a vivid dream, in that experience, you didn't know that you were dreaming. It's only when you woke up, right? And the feeling state followed through, right? So you wake up and you're pissed because you've been so enmeshed in this dream story that it feels so real that on waking, you're like, what the hell? It takes time to differentiate, you know? And then as in a lucid dream, say you have this dream with your wife and she's about to bolt, but you recognize in the dream, maybe she's driving a different car, or the house looks a bit different, or your kids' rooms or something is out of place, and then you recognize you're dreaming, right? And so in that moment, you could just say to your dream wife, like, what the hell are you doing?
My dream
Get out
of here. Baby, just in case you listen, you're my dream wife. She ain't gonna listen. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like the difference, right? You know, because I think it'd be very easy. I mean, I thought they were both lucid. So, how did you get into all this?
It's kind of a bit of a strange story. I
love strange stories.
When I was younger, I often had dreams, what scientists call precognitive dreams, or dreams of the future, things that would come to pass. And when I was a kid, I didn't really think too much of it because I just kind of thought everyone had dreams about it. It'd really be about random stuff as well. Like I would have a dream about, my father driving and pulling up into the driveway, and then my mother coming up, and then in my waking life, I'd wake up and then that experience would play out. And it's not the same thing as deja vu. It's actually something called deja reve. So I had all these experiences as a kid where my dreams were very impactful, very powerful.
Hold on. What is deja vu and deja what?
It's called deja reve, which is, it means, so deja vu is like, wow, I've seen this and it's happening twice, right? And deja vu, it's a new kind of field of study that actually French scientists are trying to really learn a lot about. And it means I've already dreamt it. So for the Western mind, that is quite a bold statement. It's quite a bold thing to think about. But
it sounds like you can see the future a little bit.
Well, I think you do in some ways. I mean, it's precognitive dreaming is something that has been researched and by really highly intelligent academic people. So it isn't just something that is, in the realms of metaphysics or esoteric circles. So there's an astrophysicist called Dale Graff, and he spent a lot of his work studying precognitive dreams and something that he calls retrocausality, and which is linked to something called remote viewing, which is the idea that, like, if you sit in your living room right now, right, and you get into the state of, I'd say, consciousness, you could potentially view a place that is physically far away from you without you needing, any tech. It's just something that you're doing with your mind or your awareness. So he's done a lot of research in that. And so, and as someone who's experienced this, how do I explain it, right? As a child, I just thought, well, maybe I kind of made it up. Maybe it was deja vu. Maybe I mixed the experiences, like your memory can maybe mix things sometimes. But as I got older and I realized, well, not only are my dreams quite strange in that way, but I can have, spontaneous lucid dreams. And then also they're so helpful. Just normal, regular, symbolic dreams, right, are so helpful if you pay attention to them, just from a emotional point of view, a psychological point of view. So for me, it's kind of really opened up like a rabbit hole that I went down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did the rabbit hole of going down, when did you start going down this rabbit hole? So
I think professionally speaking, probably like 10 years ago when I became qualified as a psychologist, I felt like my interests have always been in the intersection of really spirituality and psychology. And so I wanted to do something that would be in that intersection, right? So that's kind of when I thought about, like, I was in private practice at the time. I had worked in a lot of clinics, but I was doing very traditional psychotherapy work, and it was with a lot of trauma patients. And so I just knew that, like, it wasn't something that I wanted to do for a very long time, and trauma work is very depleting. So I just thought, okay, what really lights me up? What can I share with the world? What am I good at? And that was something that came to me, right? Like, well, dreams are such a big part of my world, so why not share that?
I think people, and like, I love this for the podcast because what really lights me up, what can I share with the world? Right. And people, so often we get so scared of what really lights us up, because we go, how am I going to make money? And there's no way, and I'm not independently wealthy. And then you just you end up down this path of a terrible life. Right. I won't even say terrible, just And I think,
very sort of mundane, I guess.
Yeah, you don't even like what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer. Like, when I was studying to become a psychologist, I had to, like, fund my degrees, my lifestyle, everything. And I set up a company at the time that one of my friends was a sex therapist, and we came together and we decided we would do, like, a box of products for couples that wanted to enhance their sex life. And that literally funded my schooling. So I'm very entrepreneurial by nature. And I think that if you want to do something, you don't necessarily need to have everything figured out right at the beginning. I really am a firm believer of that, but you do have to take actionable steps, So, like, I knew with that company that would help me become qualified. I felt like I really needed to become qualified to work ethically with people, right? Mm-hmm. And it did, but it required a lot of hard work. And I think that's also something, for anyone who's feeling maybe like demotivated, that you can, I don't think things necessarily are handed to you, but you can do a lot with quite a little if you're prepared to work quite hard. Yeah.
I was only smiling there for a second. But when you were speaking about products, I have a friend who's a sex therapist, and she's actually on the podcast, and she promotes a lot of products, like, Adam and Eve sends her sex toys that she promotes on her Instagram. But she's got 2 boys right now that are about to be in middle school. And my other friend was talking to her and being like, hey, you might want to chill out for, and she's like, oh, why? He's like, you're going to destroy your boys' lives. Like just because boys are dumb, like other 14-year-old boys.
Sure, teenagers are rough.
Teenagers, right? They're going to destroy your kids, So literally, I had this conversation maybe a couple hours ago, and so it made me
so
laugh
funny.
For a second. Yeah. So,
I was really lucky because my friend at the time, she was very visible. She wanted to be like a well-known sex therapist, and so I kind of did all the behind the house stuff, and she did the front of house stuff. And she also, I must say, like, I think she would completely own it. If she had 2 teenage boys, I think she probably would still do what she does. But it's a conversation maybe for.
It's just rough for your kids. It's just rough for your boys. Because I've been a teenage boy, and we would destroy other teenage boys for that, right? Like,
especially with social media now, it's so different. Like, I think the parameters, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing what happens with social media. But anyway, let's get back to the dreaming thing. So anyway, I mean, like, good on you, because people get so scared, and I say good on you because I know what it's like, and you're doing this profession that no one's ever heard of before. Like, for me, fighting now is a thing, right? Like, people was my profession. But now it's like, it's okay to think that. But when I was coming up, it's like, what the fuck is the matter with you? Like, how are you? I can remember my grandfather going, how are you going to make any money?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to do this though. Right. Like, so
you did, right?
So how did you think that you were going to make any money with dreams? Because, like, I've never even heard of it until I saw you.
Right. I mean, even still to this day, people ask me, like, well, what do you do? And when I tell them, they're like, well, how do you do that? I think for me, the main thing was that I had a vision of how I wanted to do it. Like, I wanted to write a book. I wanted to reach an audience where I could, speak to people who were like-minded, and then offer them insights into their dream world, both through basic psychology and then spirituality or mysticism, right? And I envisioned that as programs, retreats, things like that. And at the time, though, when I started, when I moved my business online, this was pre Pre-pandemic COVID, before Zoom, Zoom calls were just natural. And everyone at the time, because I left my private practice, everyone said to me, you are making such a huge mistake. Don't do this. This is really bad, because professionally, if you step out of it, you're stepping into a realm that is like non-psychologically based. You're going to lose your, they're not going to take you seriously. They're not going to want to take you seriously. It was, there's a whole lot of stuff that also comes on, if you become public, and how you handle yourself on social media and all that stuff. So I really had a lot of people come to me and say, like, don't do this. But I had an idea of what would make me happy, and I think what I'm best at, actually, and I just stuck to it. I'm very lucky that my husband is very supportive and has been very supportive throughout the whole process. So I think when I was sort of, because I think any business, any road, any path, you do hit obstacles. And I think during those times, instead of feeling, I was never met with like antagonism or anything like that. I was met with like, okay, you can do this. Look how far you've come. You can carry on going. And so that's really kind of been my process. But it still is very, I guess, hard for people to think that that is possible. I think now it's probably one of the easiest times in the history of being human that you can really go out and do something if you're passionate about it. So
well, that's why we're seeing all these people who aren't working anymore, right? Like, they're working. They're just not going to work for do that.
Right.
Like, I'm not doing that anymore. And I think that's a really good thing for people.
Yeah.
I think hopefully, moving through the pandemic, we'll see our levels of stress and anxiety and depression start to come down, because we don't have to go work for some asshole that you could care less about him, her, or what it is you're doing, just so that you can make ends meet.
Yeah.
So
I think definitely it's made people prioritize their value system, right? The only thing that I'll say with that, which I think is maybe coming from South Africa, right? And I think might be upsetting for some people. Like, when I built my business, I worked full time in a way, and I built it on the side until it could maintain itself. And it was hard so it wasn't easy to do that. But I think that is something that, like, I was willing to kind of bite the bullet to be able to do what I wanted in the long run. And I'm not saying everyone should take that path, but I'm saying I think it is something that maybe needs to be spoken about more openly with entrepreneurs, because I think you hear a lot of stuff on the internet where it's like, become a 6-figure coach, or all these kind of like easy things that I watch it and I go, I'm not so sure this is a good narrative, because I don't necessarily think it's going to be that easy for everybody.
Well, become a 6-figure coach takes 10 years.
Exactly.
Right. In a decade.
Right.
Okay. Right. In a decade, maybe. But that's what mastery looks like.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
I think part of the problem is people don't want to be an apprentice. They don't want to learn the skill, right? We all, me too. Like, I get stuck in it too. And I know this, right? Like, getting a black belt in a martial art, in jiu-jitsu, takes 7 to 10 years for the average person. Right. So like, you go in and then you get a black belt. But even when I started, I went, okay, I want this now. I want 10,000 downloads. I want to get on all the other big podcasts, and people tend to put the result in front of the work. Right. Or they attach, maybe not even in front of, they attach the work to the result. Right. And just do the work. Just attach it and be like, this is what it is. Right. There's a really good book. It's called It Takes What It Takes. And people don't like that, right? Like, it takes what it takes. Like, just because you did some work that you thought was a lot, right, does not mean it's enough to get
you right to where you want to be. Right. And I think people give up just as they're about to tip over. I see that often. Like, I think that's also something that, like, perseverance, there's that saying, like, learn to rest, not quit. And I think that's something that, like, I was really taught through my business. Like, I was taught how to do that. Yeah.
And it sounds like for you, it sounds what you did with your business is how I got good at fighting. I worked a job at night because nobody trains I worked at a bar. Nobody trains then. Right. And then I trained all day, and then I go back to, there's a price to that. You don't sleep that much.
Right.
But
it's not for forever,
Right.
That's the thing. Like, if you there will be progression, right. and kind of, I think that's also whatever your lot is in life, like that's wherever your starting point is, I think that's your starting point. And then like the best you can do with it, whatever you think the best is, like as long as you show up, I think the world begins to open up. I really believe that. Like, I mean, I don't think I'd be here speaking to you. I most definitively wouldn't be in the States. My visa was very much happened for me because I built my business, and I really love living in America. It's really a huge thing for me and my family, so like just all these little things that like, when I started, if someone had said, oh, they're going to take you years, I would be like, oh my gosh. But now kind of being sort of further along, it's really rewarding, I guess.
Yeah. It's super interesting. You just did the work.
Right.
And you love the work. So
that it does help. It does help. Right?
Yeah.
But there's also stuff that like, right at the beginning, I mean, I remember doing like, I had like no graphic design. I didn't have, I didn't have money to put into my business. So I literally did like, I would draw up all my posts, do Pinterest, all these things that now like, oh my God, the thought of doing them, I'd be like, no, thank you at all. But I did. And I just like, I hope that's motivating for someone who's listening to this, the idea that like, it's not going to be grunt work all the time.
No, it's not grunt work all the time, but I think it was probably very important for you to learn how to do the grunt work. Right. Like I can remember when we opened our schools, somebody, I was like, we need to hire somebody for SEO and AdWords and yada, yada. And somebody gave me some advice. He goes, why don't you just learn about it first? And I was like, okay. So I read some books on SEO and AdWords. I'm not good at it, but like, I can have a conversation about it. I can, and I'm not an expert. So by no means. So I think those things are very, very important. So like you have to know each part of your business. Yeah. So absolutely. How did you turn it into a business? Like, so you were in this psychological field, right? And then you said you're going to go do this dream thing, what did you do? What were some of those, what did some of those steps look like? And I know, maybe nobody else here that's listening is going to be like, oh, I'm going to do dreams, but it's hearing the process of how somebody else went through it, I think is very good for people.
Right. I think it's my process was kind of, I think it sounds quite similar to yours in that I had never really, like I was so ignorant about technology, didn't know anything about websites, and just decided, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I need a website. So that's where I started. I really started right at the beginning. And because it was kind of, it was a passion project at the beginning. I didn't, like I said, didn't have this massive budget. I learned how to do it. I just read on Googled how to set up a website, bought a theme, and literally set up my website. And that was good enough. And then this is where I think opportunity begins to align with intention, right? So I remember sitting in my garden the one day and just thinking like, well, okay, if I'm going to go online, I'm going to take this risk. I would like to feel supported and backed. And I randomly ran into someone who I hadn't seen since, I think it's elementary school here. It's called primary school in South Africa. And she was like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've just taken this massive leap. This is what I'm doing. And I showed her my super basic website at the time. Now that I think of it, I'm like, oh my God. And she was like, oh, that's so amazing. She had just become the deputy editor for Cosmopolitan magazine at the time. And I hadn't, this is just like random. And then she said, why don't you write a column for us and align it with your work? And I said, oh my gosh, that would be great. And so that was like kind of like the second step I took. And that really helped me find my audience at the time and bring people to my business. And so it was this one step led to something quite, there was serendipity involved. And then after that, I just learned how to do basic things, like marketing, programs. What platforms do I like? How do I like teaching people? Because that was also something I needed to learn. I think that like, I really love actually being, I have a 9-month dream group that's an intensive, and we meet once a month for like 3 hours on a Sunday. And I have a dream group that's based in Korea. I have 3 dream groups from the States. I have a British dream group, right? And that for me, it took me a couple of years to figure out that was the way I like to work best, and was the way I could offer what I do in the best way for other people to absorb that information, right? So a whole lot of steps, and then mad things in between, which I won't bore you with.
No, so yeah, but I really liked what you said a second ago as well. Like you like your very basic website, and you like rolled your eyes at your website. You're like, but that's what part of the process is. Like all the work that you did 5 years ago, you're almost embarrassed by how bad it was.
Fully.
Right. But that's what you should, and hopefully you and I will be very embarrassed by this conversation that we're having right now in 5 years. Because we're like, oh my God, we're so much farther. Like I've learned so much more since then.
Right.
So that's the constant goal. And that's what almost just do the work means. Right. Like it's not like you've made it. Your business is doing well.
Right.
Like you're doing your thing, but it's not like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. It's not like I can just go, okay, I'm retiring. Thanks, Elliot. This is the best conversation. I think also what's so nice about, work that kind of lights you up. My husband and I were saying the other day, like even, the lotto hit like a huge amount here a couple of weeks ago.
The what?
And we said, the lottery.
So
we're like, okay, well, if we won this, like, what would we do? And I thought I'd still write books. I'd still teach my groups. So even with like, if I won $1 billion, I would still show up and do this. And so for me, that was so empowering, because, maybe I would have more help. Okay, fine. But I would still basically be doing what I'm doing. And I'm very happy to say that. Like, I think that, and it's just like, I'm very grateful to be able to say that, I guess.
I'd buy all my friends Lambos. I'd buy some more houses, and I just do what I agree with you, right?
Exactly what I just be in a much, but it's exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't have canceled this podcast, I like the podcast. Like, I like to talk to people.
Yeah.
So like, whatever. And I'd probably I would have taught my class. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's no amount of money that would make me change my life.
Right.
I mean, unless there actually is like a negative amount. Like if I had to go do something else to make money because something terrible happened. But if I had $1 billion,
right.
I would literally do nothing else.
And I think that's such a good place for people when they're saying like, well, I don't know what to do. And I think that's the feeling you're looking for, that feeling of like, well, if you won all this money, what would you spend your time doing? Can be such a helpful way of thinking about like, what is your passion really, I guess.
Yeah, it's about discovering it, I think, and constantly discovering it, not just like, oh, I found it. Readdressing like, man, do I still love this?
Yeah.
Do I still love this? And I think this is something that we're seeing, that you see sometimes in businesses. Like I know with my business, for example, I would love to be able to figure out like, okay, like ask questions in a way to employees and people where their life shifted, and figuring out how to help them move on from where they are. Because a lot of times you see like somebody's life shifts, right? And then they want to do something different, but they don't have the gusto to do it, Right. And then they start maybe not doing their job so well, and then them and their boss get into and then it goes bad, right? It goes bad. Rather than if we could just like be like, how to have that conversation of like, man, I don't know.
To do.
Maybe dreams can help, because it can help us get there.
Definitely. They really can. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people who are actually in situations exactly like you've just described. And most of the time what will happen is their dreams will chase them. They'll find that, I find a lot of the time they'll have dreams literally of people chasing them, because they're kind of avoiding making a decision. It's almost like your psyche tries to chase you so that you'll confront what you need to do, And I think sometimes people, they sort of like unconsciously do a behavior that will get them to the point they want to get at, but it's in a way that you wouldn't necessarily want to pick, So like in that circumstance, like, you're not picking to choose to maybe start something on the side and be good at your job. So you end up fighting with your boss because you're resentful of having to be there. So you kind of like manifest this crisis that like ends up blowing up your life. or making it feel uneasy, right? Where if you just kind of if you can sit with yourself and sit with what you're dreaming of, specifically in times of change, I really do believe that you can really learn to like navigate what you're going through with a bit more ease, because you know what you need to do. And most of us, I think, can say we do actually know what to do, even if it is something that isn't what we would necessarily want to do, you know?
For sure.
Right.
I'd love to ask you this question about dreaming. And this happens to me often. I'll just use this one example. I had really one friend, maybe two. I had two friends growing up through my childhood. And one of them, he was my best friend. And at some point he got addicted to drugs. And we were working with him and he just, all these excuses, to the point where I had to be like, yo, man, look, I love you, but I got to take a step back.
Right.
Like we have to, I got to take a step back from this. And we kind of parted ways for a little while, maybe 2 years. And during that 2 years, I probably dreamt about him once a week, like literally once a week. And then we reconciled, and when we reconciled, the dreams immediately stopped, like done.
Wow.
And then in COVID, right when COVID started, March of 2020, he ended up ODing and dying.
Yeah.
And now I dream about him again all the time.
Because what do you take that to mean?
Oh, that I love him and that I had a really strong connection to him, and that I don't think there's a lot of people that you get to connect with like that often, that's what I take it as. But like whenever he was in my life, I didn't like, a random dream where he and I were doing something together, whatever,
right.
But it was a lot of vivid, I think what you would call, right? Vivid dreaming. And now I get a lot of vivid dreams with him.
Right. And so, I think I completely hear you on that. I think when you have a special connection with someone that can follow you, it follows through, So even though in waking life, the boundary needs to be there, it doesn't mean just because you're not speaking to the person, like you're saying, that you don't love them or you don't care for them or that you're not somehow connected. This is also something that is incredible about lucid dreaming specifically. So it's a story by a woman called Fariba Borgenzana, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing her surname properly, but the story is also in my book, and she is a professor of something I can't remember, right? But anyway, she's a skilled lucid dreamer, and in her lucid dreams, she would incubate her dreams to try and meet with the sort of like omnipresent part of the universe or herself in her dreamscape, right? She was really trying to have, I guess, what people would call like a spiritual experience in her dream. And in the first dream that she had, and these are just like regular dreams, she dreamt of this guy who kind of looked like a monk. And she didn't really think anything of it. She just thought like, well, I'm dreaming of this guy. Who's a monk, but I've been saying I'm wanting to have this experience. And so maybe that's just like wishful thinking. And then in a lucid dream, the experience is very different. It's like how we are speaking right now. So if you just imagine it like, okay, well, you want to have this experience, and then all of a sudden you met with this person or this guide, and she met the same Buddhist Lama in her sleep. And this carried on for quite a long time. And she was at a conference, something like 12 years later from these dream experiences, and she met the Buddhist. She met the exact person who was in her dreamscape through lucid dreaming, right? And her story is like, she talks about it on YouTube, and it's part of a like panel talk on a conference of dreams, right? It's actually called the Science and Non-Duality Symposium or something like that. It's called SAND, right? It's a mixture of scientists and dream teachers and all sorts of people. But my point being, right, they recognized each other from the dreamscape, which is a practice that is ancient. It's part of what is known as dream yoga. Shamanism speaks to these kind of things. A lot of ancient wisdom traditions speak to the connections that we have during sleep. And a lot of spiritual schools of thought also do, that we're like intrinsically all connected, that how can a mother know if something's wrong with her child and she wakes up in the middle of the night and she has an experience knowing, that, wow, something is happening with this person. And so when you tell me your dream experience of like dreaming of your friend when they're suffering in a time when they obviously not, you're not clear when you're doing drugs, you're just not in a good space, right? But having that connection, I feel like just speaks to that intrinsic one nature, and if you're able to lucid dream, which is something I would maybe say for you, right? Because you're still meeting your friend, the experience is still happening in your dreamscape.
It happens in my wake state too sometimes. It's really interesting.
Right. But so this is what is, I think, so powerful about doing this kind of work, because the more you do it, the less strange these experiences start to feel like. And I think the more you interact with them, the more you see why they're coming, why they're happening, or what meaning you need to take from it. I did a very interesting interview, and this was back when I was writing for Cosmo in South Africa, and I interviewed a woman called Dr. Jennifer Ashton, and she is a medical correspondent for one of the news channels here, and I can't remember offhand which one it is, but her husband killed himself, her ex-husband. He jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, and she wrote a book called Learning to Let Go, I think, or something. I'll have to give you the proper titles of the names. I'm the worst when it comes to names, right? But anyway, so she's this doctor. She doesn't think anything like a full, she would just say that lucid dreaming is probably wishful thinking. It's more about your mind. It's more about your ego self. And then her husband jumped off this bridge, and she later found, she was alerted to the fact that this had happened. And obviously it devastated. It's Jennifer Ashton. It's Ashton. Have you got it there?
No, I didn't find it. I was trying to look at it real fast.
I'll have to now. I wonder if I've even told you the right name. It was actually a couple of years ago, right? So I could be pronouncing it incorrectly. But her experience was that she was in mourning. She'd had like a couple of nights of really bad sleep, and something like on the third night, she was like in that in-between state of like wake and sleep, and she saw him sitting on the bottom of her bed, and he was wearing a very specific outfit. And in that moment, she found like great comfort and relief, because the experience that she had with him just felt like good. It didn't feel bad. It felt like
she woke up to this, or she kind of explained it like she was waking up, but that she said she was like half in sleep, half out. But I think that's maybe because it's very hard to maybe explain like what, what is happening, especially coming from a very, very medical model. Later, it turned out one of her friends was someone who worked on the autopsy of his body, and she asked him what clothing he was wearing when he jumped, because she hadn't seen his body, and he was wearing the exact outfit that she had seen him in when he was sitting at the bottom of her bed. And they had been divorced for quite some time. There was no like animosity towards one another, so she just had this. So they weren't even together still.
They weren't even together. So there wasn't, it's not like she saw him in the morning and he left or something. It was just this like completely separate experience, And so she was saying that experience really profoundly impacted her, helped her with her mourning, helped her with her grief. And I really feel that the more that we pay attention to our dreams, and it's the position that I come from, that we're actually all connected. We're very spiritually connected, I believe, to one another. It's not so strange to dream of people who have passed away. It's not so strange to even see them, I feel, in waking life, if you're open to the perception of it. And I think if you can do the practice of, it's something called wake-induced lucid dreaming, and it's where you train your consciousness not to fall asleep whilst your body is falling asleep, right? So it's like you see how a dream is formed, and if you can have that experience, I think most people will wake up after that and question a lot of things around what we think reality is and how things are formed and how we connected, quite frankly.
You've talked a lot about spirituality.
Yeah.
But not necessarily about religion, right? And a lot of times people combine these two. What is spirituality to you, and how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think I do see it as separate. So spirituality for me is not, I don't come from a specific religious background, and I don't follow a specific religion. I think spirituality for me is the pursuit of removing barriers to oneness and it's a big one, but like ultimate awareness, right? Not to sound like an asshole like we were saying earlier, but
no, it's okay. Look, it's like, enlightenment and things like that, right? Like,
right.
You don't, as long as you don't say, hey, I'm really fucking enlightened. That's when you're an asshole. Have I told you how enlightened I look?
I'm not. I'm learning how to drive on the other side of the road. I'm not enlightened in traffic.
Oh, that's funny. I'm good looking. I'm enlightened. What else? All of these, all of these other amazing things about me.
So special.
So, all right. As we close up here, two things I really love to ask people. Look, my brand isn't really much like your brand. You have and you're just, here in America, we don't really have too much in common, maybe on the surface, right? Why waste your time coming on my podcast? I don't know if maybe I like to say, maybe you'll sell 2 books, maybe 2 people will buy a book or, so what makes you say yes? Because there's so many things that we all can be doing in the world on any given day. Why sit down and talk to some dude that, like, when you Google me, I'm punching somebody in the face probably?
Well, I did Google you and I looked at your Instagram page and I felt like I just liked what you had to say and the energy that you put up there. So I agreed to it. And I also like talking about dreaming in whatever shape or form. And I feel like if it even impacts just one person, for one person to go, okay, you know what, as an experiment tonight, I will pay attention to my dreams. And in the morning, I'll try and understand what they're saying to me in the best capacity that I can. Then I feel like I've done enough, So that's why.
And last question, I believe everyone has like a unique thing about them, like your power. And I believe mostly you go and what you have to do with that power is you go give it to the world, and then the world gives something much, back to you. So what's your power?
I think my power is really helping people understand why they do what they do.
Okay.
And I think in return, I get community from it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Athena, thanks so much for coming on. You mentioned your book a little bit in your website and your work. Tell everyone where they can find you and work with you or just, learn more.
Thank you. So the best place to start is on my website, which is athenalaz.com. And then for anyone interested in dreaming, the book is the best place to go to. So it's called The Alchemy of Your Dreams. And then social media, it's just my name, Athena Laz. Yep.
All right. Guys, as always, Athena has her unique special power. I have mine. Don't go out in the world and try to be Athena. Don't go out in the world and try to be me. Please go out there and find your own power. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Gospel of Fire. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd love a review on iTunes or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Don't forget to follow me on social media at FireMarshal205. If you are a BJJ enthusiast, check out my YouTube channel. I put all kinds of instructional videos out on there, so go check it out. My book is still out on Amazon by the same name as the podcast, The Gospel of Fire. So if you are interested, go check out that. And most importantly, guys, go out there every day, find your power. Thanks a lot. Guys, look, I get it. I totally get it. You opened a martial arts school and man, it's kind of crushing you. There's all this other stuff to do other than teach, right? You love teaching. You love jiu-jitsu. You love Muay Thai. You love karate, whatever it is you're teaching. And man, but there's all this other stuff. There's the front desk. There's taxes. There's curriculum. There's cleaning. There's problems, staffing, covering. Whew, man, it's so much. It's so much. Well, let me tell you, we have started what's called Easton Online, and Easton Online is here to solve all of these problems for you. Easton Online is a digital academy for martial arts school owners and managers. Will help you establish or enhance your business with best practices. Most importantly, we're going to help you get back to what it is that you love most, teaching and doing martial arts. Okay, so for more information, guys, go to easton.online. Again, that's easton.online. Add your email. You're going to get notified about the course launches. Our first course is going to be all about the first impression specialists, your front desk, and all kinds of stuff, special offers, promotions, as well as we started a podcast by the same name, Easton Online, that's going to talk about our process of how we went from a tiny little martial arts school to what is now 7 martial arts schools, 7 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Muay Thai schools, in a very holistic way that we believe kept the integrity of the art and also deals with its people very well. So again, easton.online, enter your email, and you're going to get everything you need right there. So thanks, guys.